Welcome to all of our elected officials in the House, all of our special guests here tonight. Welcome to the year 2025, where we're still trying to figure out how to teach black children how to read. We're still trying to teach black children how to do math. And tonight we have the unique opportunity to listen to some folks who have a perspective about how they will approach this really critical work at this critical time in the city to transform things for kids. Over the last year, our team has been working really diligently to figure out what is the perfect combination between policy, politics, community organizing to really get things going for our community. We do not believe in a one-size-fits-all. We do not believe in slow incremental growth. We believe that we can have immediate change in this city today, not tomorrow. And so that's the energy we come with tonight. We are excited that these folks have raised their hands and said, hey, I have a perspective, I have energy, I have talent, I have something that I want to say to this city. I have some solutions for kids who live in our city, and I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to ask a bunch of people for some money. I'm going to knock on 1,000 doors, and I want to do what it takes to really get this thing going. So one, I want to say congratulations to you candidates for raising your hand and for being here in this moment. And then last, I want to thank our moderators who are here tonight. We're super excited to have you. Cameron's going to do an introduction, but I just want to say my personal gratitude to you, Mr. Brooke Crane, and you, Mr. Jason Spruill. And to our board members who are in the House Econ Education board members, you can raise your hand. We have our board chair, Casey Vitting, and Dorsey Hobson here. And then our incredible team, folks who are here as well. Want to give a shout out to our elected officials. We have Senator Rayshawn Kemp, who's walking in here. We have Dr. Ken Zeff on the Board of Education, as well as Shivy Brooks. And so just want to have a great conversation. So if you already have a conversation, say yeah? Yeah. All right. Now I want to pass it to our Director of Communication and External Affairs, the inimitable Cameron Preston Smith.
Thank you. Big words for a big night, for a big school board. I am coming to you right now to introduce our esteemed panel of moderators. Our first moderator is Larry Spruill Jr. Larry Spruill Jr. is a reporter at Fox 5 Atlanta. He is an Emmy Award-winning journalist with over 12 years of news and storytelling experience. Previously, he was in Detroit, my home, where he played a pivotal role reporting the news during the Detroit Black Lives Matter protests. These large-scale gatherings garnered national attention as a result of the racial tension throughout the nation due to untimely deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, and Breonna Taylor. Larry grew up in Atlanta and is a huge foodie, and he loves his mama's food. He also enjoys working out and singing. He is also a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the National Association of Black Journalists. He's also a graduate of Valdosta State University. Welcome our moderator, Larry Spruill Jr. Our next moderator is Bill Crane. Bill Crane has 30 years of experience as a senior communications strategist. He began his career in broadcasting and later served in a senior communications staff positions under Georgia's Gold Dome, as well as Capitol Hill, working for 2 U.S. senators and 1 governor in both major political parties. Crane also has significant economic development experience, serving as Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce and Forward Atlanta during Atlanta's Olympic years. During the prior decade, Crane was a Senior Vice President with the GCI Group, a global public relations firm where he helmed client engagements for Aflac, Cousins Properties, Deloitte Consulting, Intercontinental Hotels Group, and Johnson & Johnson, among others. Since the 2000 presidential election, Crane has become one of the Southeast's most visible political analysts and commentators, first with 11 Alive News, Atlanta's NBC affiliate, and then with WSB TV Action News. Crane added radio commentary in 2006, since providing analysis for WSB, as well as 750 AM and other CMG properties. In 2009, Crane began a weekly and now syndicated political column entitled One Man's Opinion. In addition to his hometown newspapers in DeKalb County, The Champion, which is DeKalb's legal organ, and DeKalb's Champion Free Press, One Man's Opinion appears in the Brunswick News, Our Town Gwinnett, the Darien News, AccessWDN.com, and WSBRadio.com, as well as several dozen other print online media outlets across Georgia. I've gotten the opportunity to work with this man, too. It's pretty good. In 2009, Crane opened his own shop, CSI Crane LLC, providing a full range of marketing, public relations, and communication services to individuals and corporations. CSI Crane specializes in corporate reputation and executive visibility, strategic media relations, and thought leadership, as well as crisis communications, particularly well-suited for the needs of highly regulated industries. Crane is a graduate of the Grady College of Journalism at the University of Georgia. He remains an avid Bulldog fan.
Go Dog.
And, I knew that was coming. And proud father of 2 daughters and grandfather of twin boys. He travels frequently for business and as a keynote speaker, and is active as a board member on more than half a dozen nonprofit organizations. Crane lives in, do you still live in Scottsdale? Georgia, okay. The offices of CSI Crane are nearby in Decatur, so welcome our other moderator, Bill Crane. You may have noticed that our advertisement said that there's a third moderator who is the president of the Georgia Municipal Association, which hosts over 500 cities, and she is also the mayor of College Park, Georgia. That is Mayor Bianca Motley Broom. And as the mayor, as an elected official, which this group of people is about to be, what you'll find is, as an elected official, you often have to answer to your constituents. You're there because they elected you. You work on behalf of the people. And as the mayor of College Park, she holds office hours and is working on behalf of the people. She did let us know that if her office hours ran over, because there are some great concerns in her city, that she may not be able to make it to us on time. But she sends her regards, and we may see her walk in the door shortly. But our third moderator would be Mayor of College Park, Bianca Motley Broom. And now I will move to the moderators, and they are going to lay out our rules of engagement for the evening.
Hi, everyone. The Civility Pledge is something that was created by the Georgia Municipal Association. Over 250 of the 500-plus cities in Georgia are now cities of civility. And basically, it's about bringing civil discourse back to public meetings and treating each other with the respect and kindness you would expect from a neighbor, a friend, or a family member. So with that in mind, for the candidates as well as the audience and community members who ask questions tonight, here's the pledge. We pledge to engage in this debate in the spirit of respect, fairness, and humility. We'll speak on issues and ideas, not on personal attacks. We'll avoid demeaning or derogatory language of any kind, including racial, gender, or identity-based insults, spoken or perceived. We'll listen to others fully before responding. We commit to raise concerns but not character assault, and promote a fair exchange of ideas for all participants. We expect all candidates and audience members alike to honor this pledge. Please critique policies and procedures, and process is not their motive or identity. Let's debate ideas, not one another. Candidates and moderators should refer to each other by their name and title, such as District 5 candidate, Dr., Mr., or my opponent. Larry?
Each candidate gets up to 90 seconds to answer a moderator's question, one speaker at a time. Please avoid interrupting. No audience prompting or crosstalk. Timekeepers will flag at 1 minute, then 30 seconds, and finally 0. Now, if time runs over, moderators will intervene. You may be asked to stop up to 2 times. Each relevant district candidate may also choose to offer a rebuttal of up to 45 seconds. For community-submitted questions later, candidates will have 1 minute to respond. Opponents may rebut for 45 seconds. Each candidate can be posed up to 2 questions per moderator, plus opportunity for rebuttal within their district. Please pace your answers and feel free to take notes.
Decorum. As moderators, we do have the authority to enforce time as well as candidate decorum. If a candidate ignores repeated time warnings, we will cut off their microphone. We won't tolerate interruption, personal attacks, shouting, or abusive remarks from the candidates or from members of the audience. The goal here tonight is fairness, civility, and order. Every candidate will receive an equal opportunity to speak. We expect candidates to respond to the timekeeper's signals and our moderator interjections. Responses should focus on the questions asked. If diverging, the moderator may again redirect. Should any candidate or audience member violate our civility pledge tonight, we reserve the right to ask them once to mind the rules of decorum, or in the second instance, to leave this forum. Treat this as you would a party at a friend's house. Please refrain from booing or heckling. Applause is welcome and appreciated, but this forum is about listening and discourse, so please limit your applause so that the candidates may answer questions without too much interruption. Thank you.
Thank you. And without further ado, we will begin. We are going to start with the candidates from District 2. If you would kindly take your place at the podium. We will start by having you introduce yourself and your platform, basically your candidate statement, and you will speak for 1 minute to outline that, and then your moderators will begin the actual question asking. So we'll start on the left and we'll go right. So we'll start with you, Tony, and you can introduce yourself and your statement, and then Stephen, you're next, and then the moderators will take over. Thank you.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I need a little bit more than that. My name is Tony Mitchell, and I'm running to be your next representative for the Atlanta Public School Board in District 2. And I'm running because I believe that our kids really need a champion. I'm a husband of a speech pathologist. I'm a father of 2 rowdy black boys, and they are rowdy. But I'm also a first-generation college student. My parents didn't have the opportunity to go to college. I'm the oldest of 4. But, you know, I'm here because community wrapped their arms around me, and I believe that's what we need for our kids. I think we're at an inflection point in our lifetimes right now with education, and at this point, we need policy that is reflective of the communities that are underserved. So, again, my name is Tony Mitchell. I look forward to having a conversation with you guys, and I'm running for Atlanta Public School Board in District 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Owens?
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephen Owens. I am a father of 3 public education students, as well as 2 more that are not yet of age, a former teacher. I worked at the Georgia Department of Education for years. I spent the last 10 years fighting for full and fair funding for public schools, and then for schools to use that money in a way that recognizes the needs of every child, specifically along lines of race and class. I currently work in an organization housed under the Southern Education Foundation where we advance school integration and resource equity. I am fighting for the education of my children. They go to M. Agnes Jones, a school like many that have been considered for closing down. I want to work for not only the communities that we are part of, but across the entire district to make sure that the genius of this city is captured, that we clog the school-to-prison pipeline. I want to fight for every single child, and I've got the experience to do it. I'm Stephen Owens.
Thank you, gentlemen. And the third candidate who's not with us tonight,
Melissa Crawford.
Yeah, Melissa Crawford, for stepping into the ring in the arena. Our kids deserve it, and best of luck to both of you this evening. The Atlanta Public School System has a budget of nearly $2 billion annually, larger than the City of Atlanta's budget, substantially larger than DeKalb County and even Gwinnett County's school budget. Yet, only 1/3 of our high school students are found to be proficient in math at grade level by the time they graduate. What fiscal programs or policies might you suggest or be used to ensure that the investments made in this $2 billion actually translate into student outcomes and results? And we'll go first in the order that you spoke.
Sure. You know, you said something there. I think we have a huge budget, and I think right now that budget is not reflective of the increases that we need to see in literacy and numeracy. You know, across APS, there are lots of gaps within our system, and you know, I think we have to fill those gaps. We just gave a lot of money to teacher salaries, and I think right now we have to figure out how do we begin to navigate outside of that. You know, we've given the money to teachers, we now have to give money to our students. focusing on student outcomes. That has to be the central kind of focus of what we do as a school board. So, I think that we have to increase dollars in spaces that matter towards the student outcomes and push on that front.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell.
We have a huge budget, and we have a lot of need in this city. Atlanta's got the highest income inequality in the nation. We're in a state with almost no social safety net. We make it incredibly cruel to be poor in the United States, in Atlanta specifically. Yes, we need to absolutely make sure that money is going to students, but what are the ways that we're actually measuring the grants and the programs that we've put in place? As a school board, I am not in favor of jerking the wheel away from Dr. Johnson, right? We need to make sure that we're providing strong guardrails to make sure that the professionals inside our schools can teach these students, and that means holding them accountable to make sure that we actually are measuring the grants that we're giving out, that are being expanded on with no expectation of success. I think that puts us in a really good position to make sure that we are having all this money, as Mr. Mitchell said, going to the students themselves instead of just bloating some central office. Out
of 87 total APS schools, almost 68% of APS schools are traditional schools, 22% are charter schools, and about 6% are partner schools. Families often feel confused by APS's array of charters, partnerships, and neighborhood schools. How would you work to simplify choices and make school quality more transparent for parents? We'll start with you.
Sure. So I think that we have to have a one school approach. I think we're misguided in having this approach where we segment out what our schools look like. I think if you put two pieces of paper and ask a parent where they want to send their school, they want to send their kid to the best school. So to talk about charters and public schools and all these other different buckets of school, I think is misguided. I think we have to be focused on student outcomes. The more we focus on student outcomes, I think that rising tide begins to lift all of the boats across APS. I think that's the important work that we have to do. Again, now, as we look at student outcomes, I think we have to think about some of those nuanced areas on how do we get there. I think that we need to start education a lot earlier. I think right now we're starting at kindergarten and expecting kids to hit literacy rates by the time they're in kindergarten, but we deal with a lot of underserved kids and populations. So how do we look at early interventions and early pre-K programs to make sure kids have the foundation to drive? How do we take the ball out of the parents' hands that they may not have those resources to give their kids early on and be a bridge to those resources as a school board?
And Dr. Owens.
One of the things that I love about the city is the way that we have taken advantage of a lot of different models to educate students. One thing I hate is the idea that we should let competition drive what should be a collaborative experiment. That is to say, if we're competing, then I'm hiding the ball from you, and I refuse. Our schools need to be working together. That means giving the full slate of options to students starting as early as possible, being in community, not just sending that email out, actually being in community, talking with parents so they know exactly what is available to them, and then making sure that same spirit goes to the way that our schools work together. I have got no interest in charters starting a fight with traditional public schools starting to fight with partner schools. We all have to work together to make sure that our kids succeed, and that means that we need to take an eye towards how much of our schools' budgets are going towards marketing, and is that a good use of our dollars? Because that should be in with a teacher and a student and the materials.
Dr. Owens, and I apologize for giving you his last name.
How
let
dare
you start
you?
with this question.
No problem.
The Atlanta Public Schools does have the highest per pupil funding level in the southeastern United States. As we've already acknowledged, there are gaps in performance and student outcomes and results. What specific board actions might either of you recommend, things like phonics or returning to memorization for mathematics, to start seeing better results in the classroom? It's not your role as a school principal or to teach, but as a layperson, as a parent, what are you seeing that you think might be brought to the table, at least for purposes of discussion? And we'll start with you, Dr. O.
Absolutely. So I think as we go back to that car example, that we need to be the GPS here, which means that we are going to have a direction that we make sure to hold the school superintendent to, the central office, as well as all the employees of APS, that research-backed and is focused on equity. And when I'm talking equity, I'm talking specifically about racial and economic equity. And so that means making sure that we recognize the experience and the expertise inside that central office, but if we are not pointed towards the excellence of all children, then that's a change that we have to make. And that comes with deep relationships with the superintendent, with the central office, to make sure that what we're doing is actually research-backed and focused on equity.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about literacy rates, and I think that it's important. I think academic outcomes is extremely important, but I think the thing that we often don't talk about is poverty, and I think you can't solve for literacy without solving for poverty. So I think as a board, we have to start to look at the solutions that impact those things. I think that there's a lot of trauma embedded in a lot of our students. So for us to move forward, I think we have to address those traumas. We have housing instability, food insecurity. I think those are issues that affect learning. Again, a lot of people in this room couldn't wake up and go to work and drink without a cup of coffee, and then we expect kids to go into a classroom and be able to really learn on an empty stomach. So I think we have to begin to address some of those issues for us to really see the increases that we want to see from the literacy rates. So I think we have to start to invest in some of those things that may not be the sexiest of things, but they are the ones that really drive the outcomes.
Amen.
Larry.
Thank you. APS graduation rates have risen to an all-time high of 90.5%, but remediation rates in college remain high. How do you ensure students are not just graduating, but graduating prepared to face their college and career aspirations? And we'll start with you, Dr. Owens.
I think that we need to recognize that anytime we have transitions inside the school, so when we're going from pre-K to kindergarten, from 5th to 6th, from 8th to 9th, and then from high school into college, that we have a chance for a gap. And education right now has a lot of off-ramps. Yes, we have a lot of remediation rates, but what are we doing to make sure that students have the on-ramps back into college? I refuse to talk bad about our graduation rate in APS. That is the result of a lot of people working very hard to work with students to graduate from school. So how can we make sure to set them up for success before they get to that level? To partnering with colleges, to seeing themselves in college, in apprenticeships. And there are programs we can do. We can do dual enrollment. We can do apprenticeships in the high school. And it starts from recognizing, seeing themselves in these positions. And I think it begins with widening the net of who is in those advanced coursework classes. Because that's not a conversation that begins when you're a senior. That needs to begin once you're in elementary school or in middle school. And that means widening the net so we capture more of the genius in our city and make sure they're set up for those courses that set them up for success at the post-secondary level.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I think we have to start a lot earlier. I think when we talk about just like this pathway to college, it doesn't start when you get to high school. I think we got to start in middle school. I think we have to start to bridge some of these programs, apprenticeship programs, like Dr. Owen said, entrepreneurship programs, but starting in middle school. A lot of our kids, we talk about Atlanta as the city that influences everything, and I think that's a great slogan, but a lot of our kids don't have a pipeline into the workforce infrastructure or the collegiate infrastructure that the city is so well known for. So how do we begin to bridge those things? How do we bring in some of our community-based organizations to kind of help these students deal with these and grow in these spaces that they need to earlier on, to where when they get to high school, they're a lot more prepared to make that jump into college. I also think that we have to look at, like you said, AP courses. I think that right now when we look in District 2, a lot of our schools don't have AP courses at the same clip as some of your North Atlanta clusters. How do we bring those AP courses and some of those higher advanced placement courses into your Douglas high schools and your Washington high schools, to make sure kids have that opportunity to where when they begin to get those resources early on, and then when they go to college, it feels a lot more of a natural transition.
Gentlemen, you're both residents of Atlanta's West Side, and you know, without me telling you, that District 2 is extremely diverse, with schools serving both affluent and working class neighborhoods and children. How would you work to ensure equity of resource and opportunities within, as you just mentioned, AP and IB, without deepening the divides and rivalries which already exist between those schools south of I-20? And we'll start with you, Mr. Owens.
Sure.
Mr. Owens? Mr. Mitchell,
Okay.
Dr. Owens.
All right.
Sorry, I'll get it before the night is through.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I think we have to, think about community partnerships. I think our district, as you mentioned, is a very diverse district. I think we have a lot of resources in our district. So how do we bridge partnerships in the space to where we can help those students navigate those spaces a lot cleaner? We have Home Depots, Deltas, all these other places that could give students exposure. So as we begin to navigate what partnerships looks like on an APS level, I think those are the things that begin to move the needle. I think those are the things that help students begin to have a sense of identity on like what they want to do next. I'm finished on that one.
Dr. Owens.
I'm hearing my wife in my head who said, Stephen, slow down. All right, here we go. I'm going to take a breath. First of all, I want to give a shout out to the folks who created the Student Success Formula at APS that does equitably send more funds to schools with higher need. That is an incredible step to doing what you're describing. And when it comes to program, I love the idea of us starting this facilities conversation on what are the programs that we want to make sure every single student in Atlanta has access. Let's start with what success looks like. And then we can have difficult conversations about what buildings remain open, which ones are repurposed, but it has to start from what does success look like specifically for students who've been historically marginalized, like so many on Atlanta's west side. And so if that's AP Calc, AP Chem, IB programs, like let's begin there so that we don't go to parents and say, hey, here's all the things you're gonna lose, but we promise you might get something good in return later on. Let's begin with the place with, this is what your child is entitled to, and this is how we are going to make sure the budget operates towards that end.
Thank you, Larry.
And our last question for District 2. Many APS families are on charter wait lists. Do you believe APS should expand partnerships with innovative schools or focus primarily on strengthening neighborhood schools? We'll start with you, Mr. Mitchell.
I was on the last one first, but should I start again?
Oh, I can start.
Yeah.
Sure, yes.
I thought we were ping pong.
Yeah.
No problem.
The question is, should we expand charters while we have schools closing? That's a no for me, friends. Listen, I love my charter school friends, and I think that we need to stop from this view that we should be fighting against each other, because the only people that helps are the conservatives in our state who want to defund public schools. We are all in this together, and the discussion that's happening right now around our traditional public schools, it is a discussion that will not stop once the charter schools come up for reauthorization. So that is to say, we need to work together to make sure that what all of these buildings are doing to serve these kids, not starting some fight about let's close another 3 schools so that we can open up another charter. Let's work together. Let's not have this division on this fight.
Yeah, no, I think the conversation around publics and charters, I think we have to have a consolidated approach. I think all of these things are, drive budget. I think we have to be conscious of like how they impact budget in different ways. I think right now in the facilities plan, we're looking at a lot of our traditional schools, and I think charter schools are not part of that conversation. I think that conversation should happen at the same time, to be honest with you, just because there is budget ramifications on both ends. I think as we think about, what do we do in this facility space, I think that we should take the community voice and make sure that we have that voice included in some of the decision making. I think our schools are the heartbeats of our community, so to make sure that we need to make sure that community has a voice and has a seat at the table as they navigate what closes. As students have to go to different schools, they may have to take buses. There's so many other different things that we have to think about. But I think we have to have a very cohesive approach, because again, if you put a piece of paper next to a parent, I think they're going to choose the best school. I don't think the charter or traditional matters the most. I think it's the school that impacts the kid the best.
Thank you, gentlemen. You're not done. You're going to be getting some community and civic questions later from the audience, but thank you for this segment, and I applaud both of you for getting in the arena.
Thank you.
Thank you. This will never happen again in this room. Look at that. Happened just...
Until the runoff.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to amend things a little bit here. We're actually going to move to District 6. So District 6, which would... Hey, somebody's excited about that. District 6, which would include Michael Hopkins, Patrice Hutcherson, Dr. Jonathan Leon, Tyrese Miller, and Tolton Pace. Now, Mr. Hopkins, Michael, he did just come to me a few minutes ago. He was here, and he actually did have to exit. He did say that he would try to get back in time, but he did have an emergency or an urgency to take care of at his home. So he did want me to let you know that. And then also, Tolton Pace, who is the incumbent District 6 board member, is unable to attend this evening due to his commitment to the APS Facilities Master Planning Community Conversations at Cleveland Avenue Elementary School. He says, thank you again for extending the opportunity and for your continued commitment, and he's sorry that he could not make it, but as a seated leader, he does have to handle what is going on in his district at this time. So we are going to have the 2 candidates who are here up, and I'm sorry, did something change? Oh, yeah, Michael was here. He had to step out. He just told me about 5 minutes ago he just left. Unfortunately, he won't be able to. Thank you for that. So we have the two candidates who are here, and we'll begin. Thank you.
Dr. Jonathan Leon will go in alphabetic order. If you would start with your introduction and your opening statement.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Jonathan Leon. The journey for me began at 1654 South Alvarado Terrace. That's the address of E.L. Connolly, and that was my first job out of school. You see, I was a fifth grade teacher there. It was in that moment that I found my purpose, because I was looking at 18 faces. Those 18 faces represented so much brilliance, so much opportunity, so much hope. And we achieved a lot together. We got 90% passage rate on our CRCT that year. We sent students to quality after-school programming, quality summer programming, and ultimately, I learned some lessons. I learned some lessons being on the ground with students, because I learned that you couldn't out-teach things like hunger and trauma. Right now in District 6, 18% of our Black third graders are reading on grade level. Only 10% of our eighth graders are proficient in math. And when we look at our EOC results for our high schools when it comes to English and early learning, that's under 1 in 5 students. So here's what I know. I haven't waited on a board seat for change, and I'll continue to do that work alongside of each and every one of you in this community. Thank you.
Mr. Tyrese Miller.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Tyrese Miller. I'm a senior advisor to Councilman Lewis' office, and I am truly invested in District 6. I've served as SGA president of South Atlanta High School, chair of the Student Advisory Council, and I've worked diligently to provide resources for our community on a day-to-day basis. This didn't just start this week or this year because the seat is available, being that no one else is here. But it started because I saw all the resources that we lacked in our community. Sending students to college with a laptop is something simple, but a partnership with Georgia Power made it happen. Starting safe routes to school in our community at Crawford Long Middle School and Sylvan Hill Middle School, because we understand that we have the most walked school district. We have the most walked schools district for District 6. So just providing resources and opportunities for our students, and understanding that we can't just support students when they get to our buildings. We have to support them in the community and in their neighborhoods. So I appreciate you, and I'm Tyrese Miller.
You both gentlemen have the credentials for the office, but you both also know that the challenge in District 6 is, as expressed by first candidate, have among the lowest literacy rates in the APS system. From Georgia's 2025 milestone results, as was cited by Dr. Thompson, only 18% of students in District 6 are at or proficient at third grade levels in English language. What specific recommendations or tangible thoughts do you have as educators on closing those literacy gaps while supporting teachers that are already under pressure of learning new teaching methods and meeting the new proficiency standards? And we'll start with you, Mr. Miller.
I think we have to start by meeting students where they are. Unfortunately, our community that we serve, they don't have all the resources. So providing early access to books and proper books. If you go to Cleveland Avenue Elementary right now, they still have books in their library from the 1990s. So being able to provide us with up-to-date resources to make sure our students have the tools and opportunities to succeed. The hardest part about the literacy rate divide right now is COVID. COVID dropped the scores even more than they already were because students were at home not having the proper resources they needed to be educated. We're talking about sending kids home, and some of them still didn't have Wi-Fi. So bringing those resources that we brought with COVID on to continue, like providing Wi-Fi for every student, making sure students have access to books at an early age to take home and keep. And starting off earlier, we can't start when they get to third grade talking about let's read this. We need to start before they even get into our building so they can have those resources, partnerships with other organizations to bring those books and those opportunities to the community, partnering with local schools to provide, local high schools to provide early literacy help to the elementary schools. So I think it's just an all-around partnership that we need. The key word that I'm going to use a lot tonight is partnerships, because we can't do it by ourselves.
Dr. Leon.
Thank you. The statistics are clear, but they represent real lives, right? These are real students and families that we're speaking to and speaking about. As mentioned previously, we know that poverty is the greatest indicator of the success that a student will have. There were also some statistics shared I want to add on to. We know that 80% of our students that are living in poverty within our district only have a 2% chance of making it out. So we fight poverty with partnerships. We have to deepen our whole child investments, and that's going to be the only way that we get to literacy improvement in a way that is scalable and faster. We need on-ramps to literacy support. So what does that mean? That means that we have the opportunity now in this facilities conversation to expand high-quality pre-K education. A key step, getting students reading earlier. We can then implement things like universal screeners so we can catch and remediate those issues earlier. We also need to look at really prioritizing some more funding and spending around literacy supports with our district. We know that when we invest in reading interventionists, with coaches, and ongoing professional development, we not only strengthen our teachers, we not only ensure our leaders have the capacity and buildings to lead this work, but ultimately we're going to get to better results. We have to invest in a whole of government and a whole of community approach when it comes to literacy.
Larry.
31.2% of APS students are chronically absent based on 2025 data. Now, compared to other metro Atlanta school districts, APS has the worst chronic absenteeism rate. As a future board member, how will you work to tackle chronic absenteeism in the district and make sure students stay in school? And we will start with Mr. Miller.
I think those numbers are surreal to me because look at our graduation rate, right? So if you're telling us you're graduating this percentage of students every year, but only about 32% are coming to school, where is the gap at? I think COVID is gone. We need to take away from this online school. It's over with. Y'all are not in college. Send these babies to school. I think the second thing is we have to meet parents where they are. We need to talk about free MARTA for not only the students that attend high schools, but also the parents. Parents can't get to these meetings without transportation, and we have to be real about the district that we serve. So when we say that the rate is this number, I think we need to do a reflection upon ourselves to say, well, what are we doing to graduate these kids if they're not coming to school? And I think that's a reflection that the board has failed to make for a while.
Dr. Leon.
My plan calls for safe and supportive schools. I believe that we maintain schools and classrooms when we stop kicking kids out unnecessarily. When we look at the suspension rates across our district, we know that when I send my black boy to school, he's multiple times more likely to be suspended than other students that don't look like him and go to school on a different side of town. So we really need to look at the ways in which we're supporting schools where students are walking in, they feel safe, they feel loved, they feel accepted. When we start to build cultures where students want to come, that's where they'll be.
Dr.
And I
Leon?
also, if I could respond to the online school piece for a minute, because having sent a child to school on this side, I'm a parent of a student at Farrell, which doesn't have the access to the high level and rigorous curriculum that other students do within our district. My son wants to be an engineer. So for us to have access to things like computer science, he has to take that online. In order for his AP fulfillment and requirement, he wants to go to Georgia Tech, top public school in the nation. That'll be the only way that he gets access to that opportunity. So until we have access for all, we really have access for none, and we'll be locking out so much opportunity for students across the south side of town, and particularly in places that do not have access to these curriculum programs. So while I want to see students in schools, I do believe that we have to have an option, particularly for those who are looking for different types of courses to be able to take on that.
Can I rebuttal to that really quick? Super quick.
Sure.
I just want to say, I agree with Jonathan. We do need the equal resources. So we're not fighting online school for a yes or a no, but we're fighting equity. We want the same opportunities that are afforded on the north side of town.
Thank you, sir.
District 6 families report frustration and the belief that they have a lack of communication from the Atlanta Public School System's leadership. How would you suggest amplifying community voices in their audience from the board? And we'll start with you, Dr. Leon.
I appreciate that question. That is a part of the work that I have been doing on our GO team at Thero. I was elected by parents to represent them and their voices. So Committing to the T is the program that we talk about. So within community, I'm visible, I am public. We're sharing the good news and the opportunities that exist within our cluster and within our district. For example, my son gets paid every day to go to school. How does that happen? He's in a program called Georgia Engages. He spends half his day at Thero and then goes to Georgia Tech, where he's studying in a real research lab doing real PhD level work, and he's paid for that opportunity. But if no one knows about the jewel that is that program, or no one knows about the jewels that exist within our schools, of course they're going to not opt in. So we really need to look at the ways in which we are marketing our schools. I do think that that's important. And the final piece that I'll leave folks off is, our district has an issue with trust. Got to just speak it plainly for folks. Folks don't trust us to do the right things. They look at a school like Capitol View Elementary that has sat vacant for 10 years, and then when the district comes and says, we're going to close and merge schools and do something with it, and it doesn't happen for 10 years, that's a tough proposition. In order for us to rebuild trust, we have to start delivering on the promise of education for all of our students, regardless of what side of town they're on, regardless of how much money they make, their parents might make, regardless of what opportunity, right, they have to thrive. We have to deliver on that promise. And that's going to be the key way that we win folks back and the key way that we start building trust.
Thank you, Dr. Leon. Mr. Miller.
I think, like I said before, we got to meet parents where they are. To be honest with you, I had a conversation with South Atlanta's principal recently, and I said, you don't have a PTA set up, and you want parents to be involved.
Yeah.
Go to the basketball game, go to the football game, set up at halftime, let these parents meet them where they're going to be. Come to the recreation centers, meet them at the local libraries, give us an opportunity to come to them, because unfortunately, some parents can't get to us. Mm-hmm. So when you say the trust is broken, I mean, I hate to say it, but the candidate's not here. So if you guys want to talk about what we're dealing with, this is an example of we have opportunity to engage with our community and we don't have you. So I think we just have to be more present, like Jonathan said, more accessible, and that starts with us.
No opportunities for the empty podiums to rebut, Larry?
All right, guys, so this question is a little long, but it's very personal to me. So 31.2% of APS students are chronically absent based on 2025 data. Now, compared to other Metro Atlanta school districts, I'm sorry, hold on. All right, second question. Sorry, I apologize. About 36% of Georgia public school students are black, according to the Georgia Department of Education, but the state only has 4% who are black male teachers. According to the U.S. Department of Education, black students who had a black teacher for 1 year before fourth grade earned higher math and reading scores than black students only taught by white teachers. They are also 5 percentage points more likely to graduate high school and 4 percentage points more likely to go to college. Barriers to entry and constant burnout are some reasons why there is a lack of black male teachers in Georgia. What concrete policies would you support to retain high-quality teachers and support black male teachers in District 6? Let's start with Dr. Leon.
As a former black male teacher within this district, this issue hits very close to home. The key for me, and it's just a simple mantra that I live by, we're going to hire teachers that we trust, and we're going to trust them to teach. When we talk about the pipelines and the opportunity and access that we have specifically in the city of Atlanta, to build real partnerships with schools and universities. The AUC is right there, right? Clark Atlanta is right there. Morris Brown is right there with a history of producing the black teachers that have built this district. So it makes no sense for us to abdicate our responsibility, I would call it, and forget about that pipeline that exists right here within our district, right around the corner from us, folks that we see and build every day. So if there aren't investments in hiring folks that we trust and trusting them to teach, then please know that that's not work that I will be a part of.
Mr. Miller.
Once again, these numbers just don't surprise me. Like, almost a year ago, we just didn't have a black male on the board. Thank you, Shivy, for doing that. But to be real with you, we have to provide resources to teachers to make them want to teach in the city of Atlanta. So I'm looking at public-public partnerships to make sure that teachers are able to live in the city of Atlanta, giving them housing like 30% AMI like we're doing in District 12. I'm looking at providing wraparound resources to them so they can help the students outside of the classroom. But also, like Jonathan said, it's too many universities in the city of Atlanta for us not to have a pipeline for teachers to come teach in the city of Atlanta public schools. And we have to start going to those schools, approaching those students, and building those partnerships with schools to make sure that we have the amount of teachers, to make sure that we have good relationships to bring in good teachers and trusting them to teach.
Bill?
Gentlemen, the average tenure of a superintendent of an urban school system in the United States is about 18 months. Here in Atlanta and APS, we've had 5 superintendents in the last 10 years. Knowing that one of the primary responsibilities of the APS Board is to oversee and work with and provide support for the superintendent, how would you provide balance and stability while still holding them accountable? And we'll start with Dr. Leon.
Start over?
Yes.
This is a perfect opportunity to talk about goals and guardrails. We already have a system that is set up so that the board can govern, right? There are goals. There are things that we want our superintendent to reach when it comes to growth, around things like our literacy rates, around math, around college and career readiness and performance. The board works together with community to set those goals and then can hold the superintendent accountable. But we have to have some guardrails in place. The guardrails are super important because that lets us know if we're getting off track, right? If we are not aligning our activities or the work that the superintendent does with things like equity, with things like building culture, with understanding that there are certain lines that we're not going to step outside of, then again, we're abdicating our responsibility as board members. So we have a system and a structure that is set up for really success for everyone, but it's on all of us to do the work. The board has to deliver a collaborative, and I would also say targeted vision for growth for our district. I was a math teacher, so if we know that the black students in our district are much further behind the white students, then let's start to target some goals for our black students to grow, such that we deliver programming that supports our black students to grow. It seems like a simple, mathematical equation where we can raise rates faster if we get black children achieving faster. So those are the types of policies and programs that I'm looking to build. I'm looking to lean into the great work that was already happening when it comes to governance within our district, because again, we have the structures and systems to do this work. We just have to execute and do it.
Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I agree with Jonathan. I think it looks like transparency. I think it looks like being able to have an honest conversation with your superintendent and your board being able to truly hold them accountable. This isn't any I scratch your back, you scratch mine. We really need a group of people to come together and say, this is what's best for students. We're not talking about adults who may or may not be doing what they're supposed to do in life. These are students who put their futures in our hands. So being very transparent and working with the superintendent to create collaborative plans to ensure that our students are getting our best foot forward.
APS has pledged to expand restorative justice practices. What does that mean to you, and how would you hold schools accountable for actually implementing it? Mr. Miller.
I think this is another thing that looks like partnerships. I think that places like Mothers Against Gang Violence, who provides wraparound resources to students who are having problems in school, we need to highlight those and uplift those organizations. I think that it's really challenging I think we have to meet every school where there is, and I think that's a part of us being more involved in schools, understanding what's going on, to be able to provide that restorative justice to those students.
Dr. Leon.
Thank you for that question. So in 2021, a part of the work that I've done just as a longtime advocate was to actually research, draft, and write the restorative justice policy for our district. We got a chance to pass that along with organizers, with our current board chair, Erica Mitchell, and the key of any policy that you pass, right, within the district is 6 important words. The board authorizes the superintendent to. So that allowed us to open up this programming, but actually we wanted to go a step further because it's not enough to just have a restorative justice practice, right, that's happening. We really need to get deeper into trauma-informed and healing-centered work within our schools. What does that mean? That means that we are approaching our schools and these problems that students may be facing with one another, or teachers and families may be facing with one another, in a healing-based and a healing supportive way, right? Until we increase, because that's what's gonna build culture. That's what's going to ensure that students want to be in our schools, because they know that they're safe, they know that they're loved, they know that they're cared for. So we need to actually deepen the work around restorative justice, because that's gonna be the only way, again, we turn around this discipline policy as well, and start to really, again, engage the real loving culture that we need within our schools to make sure that every student knows that they're welcome and they're thriving.
Thank you, gentlemen. There will be further questions coming from the audience and questions later, but we thank you for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'll...
So the next round, I know Sanjay is sitting there just shaking, just wondering, but we're gonna go to District 8, which is our citywide seat. So as they approach, we're giving everybody a minute to kind of stand, to regroup, to grab note cards for the question and answer period coming up. Oops, I was like, we're missing somebody.
We'll go with ladies first in alphabetic order, and since
Yep.
you're
There you go.
Dr. Casey Brock, if you'll, or you, sorry, did I, all right. If you'll introduce yourself and give your opening statement, then we'll go to Mr. Mann and Ms. Smith. Dr.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Dr. Casey Brock, and I stand before you tonight as my ancestors' wildest dreams. I grew up in Metro Atlanta, mostly DeKalb County, and I'm a product of what happens when young people are able to take advantage of opportunities in our public school. Whether it was waking up at 5 a.m. before my entire family to get on 2 buses to get to a better middle school through the M2M program, which some of you may remember, or getting into a magnet school to improve my chances of being better prepared for college, I understand that access to a great education can change everything. I've served in public education for over 18 years. I've been a first grade teacher, an assistant principal, a college counselor, a 6th grade teacher, and a district coach. And I'm excited to bring that kind of experience to the Board of Education. Tonight, you'll hear a lot of passion and a lot of ideas, but I'm excited to emphasize how important experience is for your next C8 board member.
Thank you, Mr. Royce Mann.
Hi, everyone. My name is Royce Mann. I'm a lifelong Atlantan, a proud graduate of Atlanta Public Schools Grady High School class of 2020, a recent Emory alum, a community organizer, and a candidate for Seat 8 citywide on the Atlanta Board of Education. I'm running to fight for the students who weren't given the same second chance that I was. When I was in high school at Grady, I was suspended for 5 days. When the SRO brought me into the office, he told me that he wasn't referring me to law enforcement because I had good grades and no disciplinary record. No student should ever be in that position. I've fought for the last 8 years to bring students to the table and ensure that we have a voice when it comes to the policies that direct us most directly affect us. And I am running to ensure that every student in this district has a voice and is given the same grace that I was.
Thank you, Ms. Audrey Stith. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Aisha. Good evening, everybody.
Not even close. Thank you.
Okay, that's all right. We're going to go with that.
These readers aren't as good as they used to be.
That's okay. My name is Aisha Allen Stith, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. I am the proud parent of North Atlanta High School, and I'm married to an alum of Booker T. Washington High School. And we have not 1, not 2, but 3 current children enrolled in Atlanta Public Schools. Needless to say, we believe in public education, and we believe in APS. However, as I got closer to the decision to run, and I got into the data, and I started combing through, I thought, oh, this is not a reflection of my city. This is not a reflection of greatness. This is not what I want to stand behind. And so the more I get into it, the more I want to be able to solve the problem. As I say in my campaign video, you cannot have the best Atlanta without having better public education. And the public education tie-in to economic mobility impacts each and every one of us. Atlanta cannot be great if our public education stands as it is. So it is time for some change. Thanks for letting me be here tonight.
Thank you. At-large members, as you all know, have the unique opportunity to represent the entire city. As a native of DeKalb County, we've long had the issue of people believing that resources are all gathered in the northern schools and that the southern schools in the county suffer, ignoring things like PTAs and private investment partnerships that are brought to each school. As a board member, how would you avoid both the reputation and the reality of favoring high-performing clusters in North Atlanta and Midtown versus prioritizing families in historically under-resourced neighborhood schools? And we'll start with you, Ms. Smith, since I screwed your name up.
You know what? One of the things I've said for quite some time now, why are we still talking about the 2 shining stars in high school clusters? And that's been the case since I was in high school. I graduated in 2001. Atlanta Public Schools really should be ashamed because we have excellent high schools throughout our entire district. So one, there might need to be a PR push. I know we don't want to put a lot of money into the marketing budget, but social media doesn't cost that much. We have to start talking about the wins that are occurring in other high schools. So that's one. I also am in a place, my children attend a school that has a very healthy foundation. And I have started talking to parents. Would you be willing to match your gift and have it go across town? I have not been told by one parent I wouldn't do that. So the parent who can give $1,000 to a foundation on one side of town probably has $250, $500 to give to another school. All of us are in public education. There's something that we believe in. There's some communal process here, or you wouldn't do it. Your child would be in a different structured school. So I think asking parents, how can we set up our district to be great? Also, a couple weeks ago, I was in the Washington cluster, and I'm not sure all the parents realize how easy it was to create a foundation. The foundation doesn't have to have any amount of money to start. And if we partner schools with one another, or you find great people who are willing to give, then those foundations can really be brought up. I look at Douglas. They now have a foundation that is really healthy and doing great things. So I think it's exposure and communicating that.
Thank you, Mr. Mann.
If we look at the status quo, the fact is that while we have incredible students and incredible educators at every school in the city, we don't have equitable offerings when it comes to programs. If you look at the school that I graduated from, Midtown High School, students have access to 9 different career pathways and almost 25 AP classes. If you go to Washington High School, it's only 4 career pathways and less than 10 AP classes. And we see the results. We see a 60-point gap in proficiency between white students and black students across the district, across content areas. And so we need to invest more in the schools where students are not getting the resources that they deserve. And that includes expanding wraparound services, ensuring that we have more mental health support in our schools, ensuring that we change the previously mentioned student success funding formula to even increase the poverty weight that we currently have in that funding formula. If you look at the formula, the weight for gifted students is slightly higher than the weight for students in poverty. I think that we need to be intentional, directing resources where the need is the greatest. There are different needs in different communities across Atlanta, and we can't act like that's not the case.
Thank you, Dr. Brock.
Yes. So it's a real issue, right? And I think it's not about reputation, but about the reality that there are some school clusters that are performing much higher than others, and that is across the board, it's black students that are suffering on the south side and the west side. And that's actually why I wanted to run for a citywide seat. It feels important for me to be able to think not just about where I live, but about the entire city and making sure that things are equitable across the board. But in addition to that, I think it takes the eye of somebody who looks at the data not just in the north and the south, but even within clusters. Because if you're looking at, say, the Midtown cluster and we're celebrating, you look at one elementary school, I won't name the name, that has a 28% literacy proficiency rate, and then literally 2 miles down the street, one of those high foundation schools has a 78%. And that's the majority of the elementary schools there that are predominantly white. And so I think it's a matter of not just looking across the entire district, but also taking a look even within clusters around the inequities that exist. And it takes somebody who looks at data and considers all of that to be a strong school board member.
Thank you. Larry?
There have been a lot of innovative school models and curriculums that have had positive impacts on students across the country. What's one bold, innovative school model you would bring to the board that APS has not yet tried but could transform student outcomes? And we'll start with Dr. Brock.
An innovative school model, let's see. Well, I do a lot of work in career-connected learning for high schools as my day job. I work with schools across the country and help them get access to resources and programs to help them to do that. And I haven't seen a really strong model in APS for what it looks like for a student in 9th grade to have a very clear understanding of all of the steps that it would take to be able to graduate and have a very strong plan. One thing I advocate for constantly is for a young person to be able to do that through experiences they have in high school. So imagine a high school model where there are metrics each year for activities that students do. So instead of a curriculum, it's activity-based. So in 9th grade, every student visits 2 colleges and has these particular experiences. 10th grade, this happens. 11th grade, this happens. By the time you're in 12th grade and you've been exposed to all of those things, you have clarity on your pathway, and I'd love to see that happen at every high school. And I actually think that's reasonable. We have the number of students in APS and the number number of schools where we would be able to implement something like that. I think that's a model that we could all adopt. We could actually start with a pilot, and then we could try it at other high schools.
Thank you. Mr. Mann.
Yes. If you look at a district like Cambridge, Massachusetts, they use a model called controlled school choice. And basically, how this works is you build out innovative programming at schools, especially at the high school level, and then allow families to rank which schools they want their students to attend. And you can also use a metric that ensures that these schools remain diverse using socioeconomic statistics. So this is a way to simultaneously integrate our schools as well as provide families with more options. I would love to pursue something like this in Atlanta in a limited capacity that uses magnet programs. For example, an Atlanta School of the Arts, a STEM magnet program, innovative models that families can actually get excited about. We talk about closing schools, but what we don't talk about is how do we bring families back that have chosen other options. And I think that through some of these models, first, an Atlanta School of the Arts, it's absolutely unacceptable that we live in such a vibrant city like Atlanta and don't have a School of the Arts. I remember in 2020 when Dr. Karstarfin talked about it being a commitment as she was leaving the district, and we still don't have one. And so I think that that's where we start, but we look to build out more innovative magnet programs that will draw families back and to integrate our schools more while we do that.
Thank you. Ms. Stitt.
Yes, in my campaign video, I talk about a study that was done in Dallas where they implemented reset centers as a means of not having children go to out-of-school suspension. I was on an APS meeting, this must have been about a year ago, way before I thought about doing this, and when I got our statistics on how many kids we are putting out of school through out-of-school suspension, it was quite frankly mortifying. I mean, it is a real problem, and it is not helping, it is not getting to the solution. So I think you use the space that's around you. Like, there needs to be more of a place where students can get outside and be able to calm themselves down. And reset centers are within schools, but they're a place where a child can regroup. And quite frankly, I think just about all of our schools need that kind of model. Another thing that I'll talk about is not so much an innovation of school, but I think it's aptitude tests. By 8th or 9th grade, it's a good time to start talking to young people about what they would like to do, what they would like to be in the future. You know, you need to ask them, do you want to sit down? Do you want to stand up? Do you want to be outside? Do you want to work with people? Do you want to work alone? Do you want to be on a computer? These are all questions that they can begin to think about. Then you put the careers in front of them and you let them go down that pathway. We don't do a great job of that. We wait until you're a senior, and if you are prepared, you might make the mark. But as we see, we don't have enough kids who are prepared.
Thank you.
Your host tonight, Equity in Education. What does, for each of you, equity mean, and how would you measure it as far as APS achieving equity citywide? And we'll start with you, Mr. Mann.
Equity looks like every student having the resources that they need to thrive in this city, period. It means economic mobility for those living in poverty, and it means ensuring that students with disabilities, that students who are LGBTQIA+, that undocumented students, that Black students, that every student in this city is supported. And how we measure that is we look at the student outcomes, and right now we know that equity is not what we are delivering. 89% of white high school students in Atlanta are reading at or above grade level. It's only about 37% for Black students. Black students account for 73% of our student population, yet 95% of those who are given out of school suspensions. The school-to-prison pipeline is very real in Atlanta. It's not some abstract concept. It is ruining opportunity for far too many young people in this city. And so we look at the data and we remain laser-focused on that. We need to ensure that the money we are spending is going where the need is the greatest, and that if the money we spend is not delivering the outcomes that we expect, then we find different ways to spend it. We spend a lot of money on vendor contracts that are not actually delivering results for our students, our educators, and our families, and we need to do something about that, and we need to do it now because our students cannot afford for us to wait any longer.
Dr. Brock?
Yeah, so a lot of my research is in like college access, exposure to careers, And I did a project where I interviewed a bunch of adults who were the first in their family to graduate from college. And the number one finding that I had that was surprising was every single person who was the first in their family to graduate from college, which if you look at the statistics there, it is unbelievable how few Black students, brown students, and students from low-income backgrounds do graduate from college. You see that they all had an intervention, and it made me realize that so much of this is left to chance rather than actual programs that are equitable. To me, equity looks like our schools that are struggling the most getting the best teachers in our city. And oftentimes that's not the case. It means that even though they do get a good amount or more funding in schools that are lower performing, that there's also more resources giving to them in terms of support. Because if we're spending more money in schools where students are not performing as high, there is something wrong there and something that we're not putting into, and we need to do an audit to see what's happening and why students are still lower performing, because my guess is we're not providing equitable resources around them and wraparound supports that they need to be able to be successful and get to school and learn and make that the priority.
Thank you. Ms. Stitt.
A rising tide lifts all boats. So if you don't know what that means, your homework is to go home, look it up, Google it, it will make sense. I think that equity in Atlanta Public Schools has a unique meaning. I think it often means bringing things to the center. And I think that's a very perilous place for us to be in. We have to find a way to help your student who is top performing. These are students after all. There's still a way to help that student see them achieve higher heights. With $1.85 billion and only 47,000 of the 70,000 seats we have, I think we still have the bandwidth and the ability to help our students who are lingering below where we would like. I think we have that ability to do both. So to me, equity isn't the term I cling to. It is more how to elevate this entire district and this entire system.
Larry.
Atlanta's growth is rapid, with tens of thousands of new residents. How would you ensure APS keeps pace with population changes, school demand, and housing shifts? We'll start with Ms. Stitt.
Okay. One, I can't ensure that. The word ensure in this whole process is a very tricky thing. I always think I majored in sociology in college, and I'm like, God, what is this useful for? However, looking at trends, it is very useful. I mean, the city is getting expensive. Our friends from San Francisco and New York who are coming to buy up all this real estate, it's easy for them. But we are going to see less people having children. We've already seen that trend. And I think it's very important that Atlanta Public Schools have a real conversation with its audience as to how we are growing. We are a thriving city, but that does not mean that people are going to have 2 and 3 children moving forward. So we have to keep up with the time, and quite frankly, we have to be data-driven. It is there for a reason, and I think that leads to the best outcomes.
Thank you. Mr. Mann.
We need to ensure that we are keeping the properties that we own and keeping them in good condition. And this means that we find ways to use the vacant properties that we own as a district to actually serve our community. And we're talking about closing more schools. We already have about 47 unactivated properties that we own as a district. This includes buildings, lots that aren't actually serving our families at the moment, aside from a few of them that are on short-term lease as early education centers. But if we want to have capacity to expanded or decreasing enrollment, we need to ensure that we have the facilities that can serve our students as schools. And then if we are experiencing a decline like we are right now in enrollment, we find other ways to use these properties to effectively serve our families, whether that's through early education, job training programs, student and family resource hubs, or tutoring centers. There's so many ways that we can use the real estate that we own, but by keeping it in the district and serving our families, then we know that no matter what fluctuations there may be in population or enrollment, we will be able to adjust to those.
Thank you. Dr. Brock.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you heard, but there's a lot of conversation right now about revitalization in certain parts of the city. And even though it's a controversial topic that I'm not going to bring up right now, I also believe that there is something about investing in neighborhoods that families are moving into to make them places that are exciting for young kids to live in. I've been out here knocking on doors constantly. I'm knocking on doors. And when you go to the south side and the west side, you see a lot of older citizens. You don't see a lot of young families. And so I do think there's a part of this where we do have to think about the community. We were recently on a forum and city council was there, and most of the questions and things they were talking about, they were relaying it to APS. But I don't know how much city council is actually working with APS to make sure that we're thinking more as a community when we're thinking about the schools and what we need to put into them. And then also, I think that it's important, and I just had a conversation with someone recently about this, that we are graduating students that are prepared for to come back to Atlanta and be our best talent. I think that's a place where we're missing as well, where a lot of young people can't even afford to buy a house or to live in Atlanta because they didn't necessarily get the kind of education they needed to be able to get that high-paying job, to be able to have that economic mobility, to actually afford to live in Atlanta. So I think there's a lot of pieces to it, but those are the ones I would focus on. Thank you.
I have a rebuttal for that.
Yes.
My good brother Royce. The only problem, yes, we have 47 unactivated properties. The tax dollars are still going towards that. So I think it's better planning and processing. What do we do? I mean, hold on. You know, Jay-Z said, does it make sense to own something that has zero return on it? So I don't think that holding on to 47 properties is something to brag about. We have to figure out what to do, where it makes sense to keep the properties, where it makes sense to offload them.
I fully agree, and that was not at all something that we should be proud of. We should be ashamed that we have let 47 properties sit vacant, not actually serving our families. What I'm saying is that we have incredible resources already at our fingertips, and we need to use these resources, again, through tutoring centers, through job training programs, through family and student support hubs, and through early learning sites. There's a lot of potential there. We have not tapped into the potential, and that's something that we should be ashamed of as a district. But I don't believe that we shouldn't look to tap into that potential.
Not taking sides in that little sub-debate that just went on, I want to go a little further on that. You have 47 empty buildings, which have to be maintained.
Not all buildings.
Not all of them, but several dozen structures that are not currently being utilized for educational purposes by APS. So, given that there's a lack of appetite for an increase in the millage rate and property taxes, which APS receives the majority of those dollars now, given that federal dollars towards education are on the decline, given all of the other needs you've stipulated tonight, what's your appetite, all three of you, and we'll each get an opportunity to answer the question, for putting some of these magnet programs of School of the Performing Arts, utilizing and creating partnerships for some of these wraparound services? We've already seen in Midtown, in Buckhead, in 5 Points, old APS buildings turned into apartments, turned into community centers, turned into recreation centers now used by the Atlanta City for recreation and senior centers. So what's your appetite to turning some of those into revenue sources to help the bottom line of the Atlanta public school system? And since Mr. Mann, you were advocating for the School of the Arts, there are several facilities I can think of that could be renovated for that purpose. So I'll start with you.
Yeah, and there's talk about utilizing the Carver campus as a School of the Arts. And I think that that's something that's worth discussion, but it needs to be driven by the community in the Carver cluster to ensure that any offerings they have priority access to as a neighborhood where the school resides. In terms of community partnerships, I think there's so much opportunity in a city like Atlanta. I grew up as a child actor. I was Tiny Tim in A Christmas Carol at the Alliance Theater.
I thought I knew your face now. I know where.
Indeed. We have an incredible arts scene in the city. My dad is a full-time arts educator. He works in APS and in other districts, teaching arts integration practices to ensure that creativity is fostered in classrooms, whether that's an arts class or a math, a science, and language arts class. But there's a lot more that we can do and should do when it comes to building some of these innovative models through these partnerships, because as you said, we don't have really secure funding sources at this moment. Now, we should be demanding that Fulton County properly assess commercial properties so that we get about the $200 million that we could be losing.
Good luck with
there.
that, but I'm in agreement.
But again, that's difficult. And so I think community partnerships is the key, and we have incredible institutions already in Atlanta, like the Woodruff Arts Center, like SCAD, that could be great partners for a School of the Arts.
Ms. Stith?
Yes, let me just add to the rebuttal I gave Royce. I think there has to be a community voice at the table. But I don't know if holding on to 47 properties is in our best interest at this point. I mean, I was reading about a property near here that has been closed since 2004. Okay, there's been plenty of time to figure out what to do with that property. And you still have to maintain that property. There still has to be lights. There still has to be groundskeeping. There still has to be some type of security. So there's a cost that goes into all of these properties. So I think it's putting a plan into place. And we better do it pretty soon. I mean, listen, the city is growing faster than apparently APS can keep up with. I mean, and it needs to be a case-by-case scenario. I mean, what's right on one property does not mean it's right in the other. There isn't a blanket that can change all of this. But I think we better get to it now. I mean, we have been sitting on some properties. One property was built in 1931. And it holds virtually no ability to be renovated, but APS is still paying for it year after year. That's a problem. That is money that could be put into programming. So I think a plan needs to be in place, a process needs to be transparent, and we need to figure out what works here for the greater good of our city.
Dr. Brock?
Yeah, so I can tell you two ideas that I really like. One is, well, first I want to say, one of the most important things here is that we're responsible with who we work with and who we get into business with. I'd imagine there are people just salivating right now over some of these properties. And so I do think it's important that there is somewhat of a line there ethically of what happens with these properties and that we're handling it responsibly. But there's two pictures I want to paint for you in 1 minute. Oh my goodness. Okay, picture one is a partnership with a place like Home Depot, where they come in, they take on some of the responsibility of renovating the space, making it beautiful, gorgeous, and then we have students who are interested in manufacturing, construction, jobs that are related to Home Depot, and they're able to come out of that earning a certification. I think that kind of innovation is something that we're ready for, yes. Another idea that I've heard that I really do like is having it be teacher or public service housing, and turning some of those into places where people who work really hard every day, probably should be earning even more money, even with a raise, could have affordable housing. And that also there's an incentive for teachers to be able to stay in the classroom because it's affordable. And trust me, I know what it's like to be a first-year teacher, and it is really hard to make it in a city that is this expensive. Atlanta's not cheap, we know this.
Larry?
Currently, only 36.2% of APS students are scoring proficient or above in ELA, and APS has pledged to increase this number by 20 percentage points by 2030. APS has launched new investments in early literacy through literacy coaches and comprehensive support and improvement schools, and are training teachers on the science of reading. How would you hold the superintendent accountable to deliver measurable results in literacy by 2030 as promised? And we'll start with Mr. Mann.
Thank you so much for the question. Literacy is the foundation to our public schools. If students can't read, they can't learn. And I think at the heart of this is early education. Right now, Atlanta Public Schools only offers about 1,150 pre-K seats. I think a lottery is a fine way to fund a pre-K. I don't think we should have to use a lottery to decide which families get to access early education. So I would look to, going back to some of these vacant properties, expand community partnerships with entities like Sheltering Arms, where I was at this morning celebrating Georgia Pre-K Week, reading to a pre-K class, with other providers of high quality, quality-rated pre-K and child care in this state. Because if students are already behind at kindergarten, then they're not going to be able to catch up. We also need to support our educators. As you said, we've started training educators in the science of reading. That's only for our elementary school teachers. I want this to be expanded to middle and high school so that teachers at those grade levels know how to identify gaps in literacy and begin interventions. We also need to bring parents and caregivers into the conversation. That includes supporting initiatives like the Literacy and Justice for All program, which one component of that is training for parents and caregivers in the science of reading. It truly takes a village to raise a child, and I think this is especially true when it comes to literacy.
Dr. Brock.
I love this question. I started my career as a first grade reading teacher, and I was lucky enough to have a mentor teacher that said, forget that whole language thing, we're doing science of reading. So all of my young people in my classroom, we grew 2 years of reading that year and growth as a class in reading because we used something that was evidence-based, which is really important. So I'm glad we are going back to that. The challenge is, how do we do that with fidelity? And that's the piece where it's going to take the superintendent and a really strong team to make sure that what's happening on paper is actually happening in the classrooms. There's a couple of things here that are really important to me. One is early screening is so important, but I cannot imagine, actually I can't imagine because the data is here, how many young people we have left behind post-COVID. It is awful. And so right now, we're not identifying students who are not reading in 6th grade, 9th grade, which, by the way, I have seen students in those grades come in grade levels behind who became excellent readers. But I think making sure that we're making investments in those earlier grades and not leaving kids behind is extremely important. But then also, we need to make it fun. This should be an all Atlanta, all hands-on thing. Like, we should all be encouraging young people to read. We should have parent programs where parents are also learning how to teach phonics because it's fun, and they can then go home and support their kids with that. Because it needs to be all hands on deck because it's that big of a challenge right now.
Ms. Stitt.
20% in a little less than 5 years seems like a tall order to me, but if Dr. Johnson is rolling with it, I would roll with him, and that would put us over 50%, which would be great movement for us. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is we have huge pockets and communities where parents are faced with literacy challenges. So when you're asking that child, go take this home and work on this, there may not be someone at home who can do that. So one of the things that is very common in my neck of the woods is tutoring. I would love for us to figure out how to get rid of some expenditures so we can offer tutoring for those students, because I think to put more pressure on a teacher is a lot. Getting a teacher trained is excellent, but if we can provide tutoring services that can give that one-on-one attention to students along with literacy screenings early on, that's when the ship really begins to change directions.
I have a rebuttal to that. I disagree. I do not think it's ambitious enough to have a 20% raise. And it can happen, and to accept, and I'm not saying that you're accepting this, but to accept that only at that point in time, 56% of our students are reading at grade level? Again, APS is wonderful, it's beautiful, it's not that big. And we can actually make a lot of progress a lot faster than I think we can if we make sure that things are done correctly and that we're giving teachers and schools the support and training that they need.
Thank you.
Larry and I both work in TV newsrooms, and it's a sad state of affairs that we're in a situation now where mass and school shootings are occurring across the country several times a month, sometimes more than once a week. Student safety, as a result, is a growing concern. Parents feel that APS may not be providing enough in the area of mental health support and additional security positions. The state provided $800 million in last year's budget to allow all middle schools and high schools to have a school resource officer, and additional funding for mental health counselors in middle schools and high schools, and they're rolling them into elementary schools. Is that enough, and are you seeing in your communities that making a difference? And we'll start with Dr. Brock.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was a school leader, and there were 2 times where our school was on lockdown, and to be in that kind of situation is absolutely terrifying when you're responsible for young lives around you, and it's not something anybody should ever have to deal with. And then to just think about all of the lives that are lost by people who actually go through with things is just, I hate how many prayers have to happen before you drop your kid off to school every day because you don't know that they're going to come back home safely. A couple of the things that I've talked to school leaders about here, one is to make sure that our schools are physically safe. I think there's a prevention piece, and then there's a what's happening right now piece of this. Prevention-wise is we've seen now that some of the school shootings that have happened have been because the doors are not secure, because you can lift up a window, because a student can get into a school building, or a young adult
Go
can get
into
into
the
a
loading dock at the back of the lunchroom.
Exactly, right? And that should not be the case. And so one is making sure that we feel responsible for making sure that our schools are physically safe. And then the other is providing the kind of support young people need for the prevention side of this, making sure that we're investing in mental health resources, that we're investing in counselors, and that we're investing in the kind of spaces where students feel like they belong and heard, and where they feel like they can go to an adult if there is anything that's happening that makes them feel unsafe.
Ms. Stiff.
Yes. To answer your question, no, it is not enough. Anyone who has received that call from APS robocall, such and such school is shut down. I remember last year, my child goes to an inner city high school, and you get that call, and I get the call from her, and she says, we should be safe because we're in the gym and it has metal doors. That is a heart-stopping moment. We have not done enough. We do not do enough for young people who are feeling insecure. I think the problem goes way beyond before it becomes that type of problem. We don't do a great job of recognizing mental health challenges for young people. We have counselors in APS, and I will let parents, or you can Google what parents feel about those counselors, and some are great. But children who are not feeling secure or are having thoughts, they often, to Dr. Brock's point, they do not have a place to go. And that's not safe in a school system. So we have got to set up counselors who have better training so children have a place to go so that these calls are not as frequent. I think over the last 2 years, Midtown has had 2 shootings that were happening in the neighborhood, but where the school has to shut down. And that is a very scary feeling. And so as parents are sitting at home feeling that we have not done enough as a society to stop that.
Mr. Mann.
This question is really personal for me because I first got engaged organizing in the community, leading the March for Our Lives here in Atlanta when we had about 50,000 people marching through downtown demanding an end to gun violence after the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. And after that, I served as legislative director for that organization for 3 years, fighting under the Gold Dome for laws to make our schools and communities safer, laws like pediatric safe storage to ensure that guns are stored safely when they could be accessed by children, things like universal background checks to ensure that guns can't be bought without a background check being conducted, and investing more into the mental health of our students. And this is something that I remain committed to and is at the center of my campaign. One of my top priorities is doubling the number of counselors in our schools. It would take about $30 million a year salary and overhead costs, but I think that's worth it when we have almost a $2 billion budget. We also need to invest in prevention. We need to ensure that we're working with community-based organizations that specialize in violence intervention. Organizations like Chris 180 and their Cure Violence initiative to bring folks who are trained in identifying signs of conflict and addressing that conflict before it turns violent. Once violence has occurred in our schools, we've already lost the battle. It shouldn't be about ensuring that we limit the loss of life or the bloodshed. It should be about ensuring that doesn't happen in the first place.
Thank you. We have no more questions in this section. We'll be going to community questions. Sorry.
Have District 4. Thank you for, let's get the stage, this handshake, District 8. It's an awesome picture. So we do have a candidate here from District 4. Everybody take a break. We're almost at community questions. If you were able to see our run of show, that starts at about 8 o'clock. We started a few minutes late, so a little bit after 8, we will get to that. I wanted to just read something very quickly. Everybody just take a deep breath.
Do you want to give the room a 5-minute nature break? Because I don't want him to be speaking to an empty room, and I can hear it thinning behind me.
Before we begin, I want to note that all invited candidates were offered the opportunity to participate this evening. We've seen a few who have not come or had to leave early. Mr. Sanjay Mendonça is here and will proceed with answering the scheduled questions. His opponent is Ms. Jennifer McDonald, who is the incumbent in seat 4 in Buckhead, and she is currently on the school board, and she is not here this evening. So Mr. Mendonça may reference his opponent or the incumbent's public record, when it's relevant to policy differences or accountability. But of course, as rules of engagement state, that all remarks are respectful and factual, and kind of like other candidates mentioned, others who weren't here. So while he won't get rebuttals on stage, he is able to speak his opponent's name respectfully if he wishes to. So he will just take 3 questions in a row once he introduces himself. Thank you.
We met in the parking lot, but the rest of the audience didn't, so I'll let you go ahead and give yourself an introduction and opening statement.
And I'll try to keep things fair. I'll try to avoid referencing the incumbent because she's not here, so that's only fair. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a beautiful evening. I want to thank all of you for being here today evening. I'm just going to go ahead and presume all of you came here and stayed this long for me, just to hear me talk. So thank you, and thank you, moderators. And Equity in Education, thank you for this platform. I am very appreciative to be here, and it's an honor for me. So let me get started by saying this. It's been a few decades since I've been in a debate, and the last time I was, it was very different. I've never been in a debate like this before. So it's good for me to think that you couldn't find one other person in the North Atlanta district who would disagree with me. So thank you. And I will, dig right into it. My name is Sanjay Mendonça, and I'm running to represent District 4 on the School Board of Education. The biggest quality I can say I have is that I'm an APS dad. I'm a full-time dad. I've got 2 kids who have been through the APS, routine. My daughter just graduated from APS, and my son is in high school, and I'm, invested, and it's very personal for me. So I'll just start with that. I'll keep my answer short. I know you guys have been waiting a long time, so we'll just dig into questions, and then I can, share a little more about myself.
Mr. Mendoza, charter schools like Drew High School, KIPP, and even not a charter, but North Atlanta High School, which is an old IBM facility that was donated to the city, are some pretty impressive crown jewels, but we would all acknowledge those are not the same when we go to some of our neighborhood schools as we move out into parts of the city that are less affluent than District 4. What role do you believe charters should play in the APS future, and how would you balance those resources allocations with the strengthening of our traditional neighborhood schools?
All right, so here's my take on our schools and specifically charters, right? I mean, I've said this from day one. I got into this, it's because of the kids. It's because of the kids and because of the kids. And people have asked me this question before, and I say this very, honestly and as sincerely as possible. If we have a community that has a need that needs to be met, my first preference would be for APS to meet that need, right? Now, I do understand that in certain situations, APS may or may not be able to meet that need. It could be a resource issue, a time issue. We can't wait. Our kids are going through our school systems, rapidly. So for me, at that point of time, we have to look at all options. And if charters are an option, then that's what we have to look at. But on the back end of it, we can't be doing this and not holding our charters accountable, right? Right now, we've got charter schools, and some of them are failing. We have our schools that are failing. And
ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if we can hear you up front on the table, that's not the way this is supposed to be. So if y'all will step out of the back of the room or be respectful that we have a speaker on the podium. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, so for me, when we have, charter schools that are failing, that's a big concern. We've got policies in place, guardrails in place, but we're not holding them accountable to our own standards. So I think that's where the problem lies. I do understand that we have a resource issue right now financially, so no new charters have been approved, and that's a good thing till we can get our things in order. But as far as charter schools go, we definitely need to hold them accountable, and I keep saying this, we're doing a pretty good job of failing ourselves. We don't need to be paying somebody so much money to fail. I need all our charter schools to step up and be held at a higher standard than our traditional schools.
Larry.
District 4 is home to both APS's strongest and most scrutinized schools. How would you ensure high-performing schools don't mask inequities across the district?
You said they don't match?
Don't mask.
Don't mask inequities. Well, so, being in District 4, when I started this race, I started this race because of some of the issues and challenges we have in our district. When I meet with people from other districts, and I've had this journey over the last 1 year, I almost in some times have been hesitant to talk about our issues because our issues don't feel as bad as some of the other issues in our city, right? I recognize that. But at the same time, when we talk about equity, and some of my candidates here have talked about this, equity is not bringing one group down to bring another group up. It's raising everybody. So in North Atlanta, our challenges, might not be that severe or intense as some of the challenges of the city, but we do have issues, and we do, face that. And I joke about this a lot because I always feel like I call it the Game of Thrones for APS, right? It's the North versus the South. We have these gaps, we have these bridges, we have these issues, but these issues are not new. They've been here for decades. And at some point of time, we've got to stop using them as excuses for why things are wrong and start recognizing this as a reality of our city and try to figure out ways to rise above that so that we can then, build a better school system for all across the city.
Property taxes fund half of APS budget. The rest is funds from the state and other partnerships. What is your philosophy on balancing fiscal responsibility with the growing demand for new programs such as expanding AP and IB offerings across the system?
I'm glad you asked that question. When I started my journey about last year, I've been on the PTA boards for my elementary school as well as the middle school, and I've been involved with our high school PTA heavily. One of the challenges I had was that I was noticing that, anytime we wanted to do something, I was told we don't have the resources. So that's the first time I thought that, okay, maybe we don't have the money. I go back and look at our budget, $1.85 billion, and back then it was running about 140 million over, and that really shocked me. And at that point of time, I said, okay, there's something wrong. My background, I've been in corporate, I've been in nonprofit, I've owned businesses, I'm a full-time PTA, dad, full-time dad at APS. I realized that, I have the skills and the range of experience required to be able to help APS as well as some of our board members, and that's how I got involved, right? In terms of property taxes, again, North versus South, I hear this a lot in my district up in North Atlanta where people talk about APS, 50% of APS's general funds comes from our district, right? But we don't get that much back. And everybody who I've worked with up in North Atlanta, they are happy about that. They're happy about paying taxes and supporting our city. That's what they want. That's the true heart of North Atlanta. We're not this group of people out there who doesn't want good for the city. It is completely the opposite. Everybody in North Atlanta wants our city to be better and our education to be better. What we are not happy about is putting all this money in and not having the outcomes that should be coming. 30% proficiency at $1.85 billion is not where we should be. And we'd gladly give more if we can raise that up.
Larry? We're only doing one round? That was 3 questions. We didn't do.
Well,
we can do the second round. You just tell.
Well, Dr. Leon suggested I disagree with myself to keep things entertaining. So if you want, I can do that too.
I mean, he's going to get community questions. We can give you a second round because everybody else got 2.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thank you for this opportunity for being here. Like I said, I joined this fight because I think we have an immense opportunity right now. We are in a budget crisis, as I call it. We have a new superintendent. We want to keep that superintendent for more than the 18 months that we've been seeing on average. I think we have issues to fix. I started this journey looking at our budget. I started this journey looking at outcomes. And since then, I've had so much added to my list. But everything comes down to, these few points. And that's my takeaway for all of you today, is what I want to work on is our student outcomes. What I want to work on is accountability, both financial as well as operational. I want to work on community engagement, and not just in North Atlanta and our district, but across the city. I want to bridge this gap, this whole North versus South thing. These are fictional lines that have been drawn because of how our communities operate, and that has to go away. And I want to work on giving our kids the resources and the access that they deserve and need. And Dr. Benjamin Mays has said this, and this is one of my favorite statements, right? He said, if you look at it any which way, right, it is failure. It's not failure, but it is setting low goals. That's a sin. And right now, I think we are sinning, right? So we have to fix that. I mean, our goals have to be higher. We have to do better for our kids, and that's what I'm standing for.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Cameron, if you'll come forward and lead the community questions, and Larry's going to start writing his story for the 11, and I'm going to take a nature break.
Yes. Thank you, moderators. We will start with the community questions. Anthony has collected note cards from you. We're going to invite all of our candidates up to the podiums so that when we read the questions, they have the opportunity to respond. They will not all be responding to each question for a minute and a half. I promise you, I need to go home too. So there are a couple of questions that are directed directly at a certain district. The other ones, we will take basically the first response that comes in. And I will pass the mic here to Anthony. Thank you.
All right, good evening again. So y'all can come a little closer to the podium. I ain't gonna bite y'all, y'all just up there. We have a few questions from our audience. We're gonna ask a few of them. We're gonna ask the ones that have not been answered yet. There has been a lot of conversation around student, school, and the school board, but no candidate has spoken about advocating for teachers, especially SPED teachers. Teachers are quietly quitting, are overwhelmed, lack classroom resources, have serious concerns around their safety. How will you advocate for teachers? And whoever fills the Quaker style will take about 3 responses. Yep.
So research shows that there are really easy ways to push teachers out of the classroom. One is to make sure that their school is filled with high concentrations of poverty. All right, if we are unwilling to talk about where students physically go to school, the second way that we need to talk about is high pay. If we are unwilling to go that direction, then let's talk about the quality of principals that we are installing in every single school, because there can be a marked difference in how long teachers stay based on the quality of principal and how willing they are to fight for those teachers. But let it be known, we will see teachers burn out if we do not pay them enough. If we do not address the fact that we have high concentrations of poverty in our schools, then these teachers will burn out and leave without structural changes. So I'm going to do what the school board can do, which is work to make sure that we have the highest quality individuals as their leaders, that they are set up to protect and support those leaders, and to make sure that we work with the city, with the state, to make sure that we don't just deal with the situation as it sits today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. Seat 2, and feel free to line up as you all, there's 4 podiums, so if you all want to rebut, let's go. Dr. Brock.
Okay, I'm happy to go. I wish I could sit here and tell you that I was miserable as a teacher, but it was probably one of the most joyful experiences of my life. And I would love to go back into teaching one day, preferably first grade again. I've taught in joyful environments where there was high poverty. And I think that if you have the right school leaders that provide the kind of place where teachers feel excited to show up, supported, and have the resources they need, then you can make it a place where teachers are happy, where they're satisfied. There's a ton of research out there that says pay is not actually the reason teachers leave the classroom. It's very often about the culture that's at the school as well as the manager. And most people know you don't quit a job typically because of the job, it's usually your manager. So I think also investing in strong leadership at schools is essential as well. I want to give a shout out to somebody who actually taught in one of those schools with me. She's here tonight, and we were in another city, but we remember what it's like, and yeah, I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
All right, we can have one more. I'm not sure who went first. Tony, and then Dr.
Yeah, sure. I think we have to take a look at all the roles that teachers have in those schools, in the school system. Right now, teachers are juggling. You know, they're the teacher, they're the mental health coach, they're helping deal with housing instability. I think we need more resources in our schools. I don't think pay is the issue. I think the resources that teachers have are the neutralizers. So the more resources we can put into different programming to make sure that they are seen, to make sure that teachers don't have to do all these things, they can just teach, because I think it is hard enough just to teach kids, especially in underserved communities. I think that is where we see the benefit. I also think that leadership is extremely important. I think that, you know, we have to find ways to make sure that we keep principals, good principal talent in our APS schools. A lot of these people are going to the front office. A lot of these people are moving to different roles. We have to keep those talented individuals in schools, because good leaders create good people who can follow. So again, we want to make sure that we have resources, but we also want to make sure that we have good leaders and a stable sense of leadership to make sure teachers feel seen.
Next question comes from Ms. Davida Huntley. Historically, many decisions were made by the APS Board against the desires of community. How will you commit to your community when decisions of the superintendent, board colleagues, or other factors go against your constituents? Anyone? Yep, first week.
I've been telling folks plainly, I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. If you look at the org chart, right, for who the school board serves, it is our public. So that's a very simple answer for me. And it's showing up is listening and delivering on what our people, our community is asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leon. Sanjay?
Yeah, for me, it comes down to, what I said earlier, community engagement and communication. That's one thing that District 4 has had, a gap in. I've heard this, I've seen this. We've not had a town hall, no real engagement for 4 years. So I plan to change that, and I pushed, a community engagement plan online where I'm going to make myself really accessible, have town halls. But the idea is to always stay ahead, right? I mean, I know there's decisions that are going to be made. Sometimes it would, it's something that benefits the city and might not, be good for one particular district. But at the end of the day, the idea is to communicate, to engage, to talk to people, to make sure that you are that liaison between your community and the board, and that the board's listening to what the community, APS and the board's listening to what the community wants, and vice versa.
Ms. Stith?
Anthony, was the question, what are you going to do when you have disfavorable information for your
How will
constituents?
you commit to your community when decisions of the superintendent or your board colleagues or other factors go against your constituents?
Well, for one, tell people. APS has to do a better job of communicating. And newsflash, you will have to deliver bad news from time to time. I think it's in how you message them, what relationship the board member has with their greater community, but you can't always deliver good news. We're in an ever-evolving system here, and some things that we wanted can't exist, and that's okay, we will move forward. So I think communication is key, but also the school board member has to be willing to deliver all news so that their greater community is informed.
Thank you, Ms. Stith. Next question. So far during this discussion, the topic of Spanish-speaking children has been very minimal. And even though we have very productive or proactive candidates, none have truly touched the subject. How are you going to improve resources for non-English speaking children in APS?
Yeah, so the first school I taught at was in Houston, Texas. The population was about 96% students from Central America and Mexico. All of our assemblies were actually in Spanish. All of our teacher meetings were in Spanish, and I was absolutely an outsider there, but was so quickly welcomed in. But we had a ton of resources when it came to making sure that students had the resources they needed. One, to have that sense of belonging, but also to have the resources they needed to be able to test into the general classroom, because in that school, most students came in only speaking Spanish initially, and so it was kind of a flip. And so because I started my career there, and also thinking about all of the other issues, and you didn't say this, but bringing up all of the issues around that we used to deal with around immigration, around citizenship, I feel very passionate about making sure that we support that population of students.
Thank you, Dr. Brock. Ms. Stith?
Buenas noches a todos. Yo soy Aisha. Yo vivía en España por un poco. I didn't want to flex that muscle, but I will. I did notice we talked a lot about black children tonight. We did not say black and Latino children, as we have a rising population. I will give you a little story that happened in Morningside Elementary, where my kids, well, one goes and two have gone. We merged with DeKalb County a few years ago, and I believe it was Briarcliff Elementary. We were getting a host of Latino students. The school needed a little prompting. I said, you're going to have to put all of your newsletters in English and Spanish. And it was a quick pivot, but it began to make our school more inclusive immediately. So whoever had that question, I'm here with you. I learned to speak Spanish at North Atlanta High School. So that was very impressive. It was, when I think about programs we've lost. That is one that is very severe. So I'm right there with you, and that was an important question. It was an oversight on my behalf, if I didn't mention it. Gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Stith. Dr. Owens?
Yeah, I think we don't realize how many of the rights for students who are learning English actually sit at the federal level. So what happens if the president dismantles the Department of Education and that phone is no longer picked up? We can enshrine students' rights in local district policy and beef up our accountability of schools to make sure that every single child is getting their rights, like access to gifted programs, that you are not allowed to restrict kids from based on the language of origin. And also, we need to talk about the type of multiculturalism and bilingualism that does not subtract from the home family. If we are only interested in teaching English, what we will do is cause a chasm between these children and their parents. We need to recognize the asset right there, and what we're doing is we are building bilingual scholars, and that looks like treating their parents as an asset that comes along with us in their education.
Great. We're going to have one final audience question. Audience, you will have an opportunity to continue to engage these folks over the next month. We're going to have one final question, then each candidate is going to give us a 45-second to a 1-minute closing. The final question, I'm going to pull two together. I would like to hear more from candidates. How do you plan to balance the under-enrollment of the Southwest and Southeast clusters without closing schools? And I'm going to combine that with, and how do you plan on redrawing the lines, district lines? Go ahead.
And we're adding the closing to this?
No. Yeah.
So I want to start by saying that by 2030, we're planning on closing several schools, but also by 2030, the city of Atlanta is building approximately 20,000 new homes. Never in my life, while deciding what college I was going to go to or any other institution, did I not think a low teacher-to-student ratio was a bad thing. So why now is it such a bad thing? I think we need to reevaluate what we're looking at when we're talking about these school closures. And as far as, what was the second part to that question? I just want to make sure.
Would you redraw lines?
Honestly, yes. I feel like the lines are very gerrymandered, and we need to reevaluate what that looks like.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Miller, District 6.
Yeah, I think that we need to focus on what we are putting in our schools and ensure that we have innovative models that actually attract families back, and also think about how we can break out of some of these lines that we've created. With having having magnet programs such as an art school or a STEM magnet, we can allow families to choose to go out of the cluster that they're zoned for. I do think we should look at exploring redrawing some of these lines, but we can't do it until we look at what we offer in terms of programming. Of course, families are going to be mad if they're told that they're going to be redrawn to a different school if the programming is different, if their student is not going to get the same resources. But if we can provide great resources at all of our 87 schools in the district, then we won't have such backlash when we talk about redrawing lines, because families will be confident that no matter what school they're zoned for, their student will be served adequately.
Well, since you're already there, Mr. Mann, I'll have Casey, Dr. Brock, and Ms. Stith join you for you all to give your 1-minute your 1-minute conclusions. I'm so sorry. And we'll start with, you're already talking, Mr. Mann. We'll go with you.
Again, my name is Royce Mann. I'm a lifelong Atlantan and proud graduate of Atlanta Public Schools, a recent Emory alum and a longtime community organizer. I've been advocating to bring students to the table for the last 8 years. I served on the GO team at Grady High School, was appointed by the board to the district's LGBTQ+ task force, and I even interned directly for the Board of Education. But the most important experience I bring to the table is none of that. It's the fact that I was in our schools 5 years ago. We have a 9-member Board of Education. We have somebody with an education doctorate who has extensive experience in educational leadership. We have a current teacher. We have multiple parents. What we don't have is anybody who's been in our schools as a student in the last 2 decades. And I think that not having that perspective, a perspective that Tyrese and I would both bring, is one of the things that's holding us back from actually addressing the issues that are facing our students. Thank you.
Ms. Stith?
I asked this last time. Any APS grads in the house? Any alumni? I see a few over here. Anyone remember the activity buses we used to have? Anybody remember the Battle of the Bands? I think I talked about, I lived in Spain thanks to North Atlanta High School. My husband went to all over Europe. Our families were not families that would have been able to send us to do that if it wasn't for Atlanta Public Schools. And as I look at the amount of money we have now, $1.85 billion, and I don't see those programs, what I see is opportunity to bring those things back. We live in a place where children are graduating or leaving our schools with 30% literacy rates and access to guns. That is a problem for each and every one of us. This city is much greater than that. We are much better than that, and it's time for a major pivot to some real change. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and I hope to meet all of you. Most importantly, I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you. Dr. Brock?
All right, $1.8 billion budget. It's a lot of money. Almost 50,000 kids, should be more. These are huge responsibilities. And we are at a critical time in our district where this responsibility is a great one, especially as a citywide board member, where you're not just even responsible for your district, but for students across the entire city. It is more important than ever that we consider experience when we're thinking about our next C8 board member. Because tonight, we heard a lot of passion, we heard a lot of ideas, but it's important that somebody goes into that board seat day one, ready to go and ready to support our superintendent into taking things to the next level. To not that 56%, I don't agree with it, but I think we can get higher, let's say 75 minimum by 2030. Thank you. BrockForAtlanta.com if you want to know more.
Thank you, candidates for District 8. We'll take Dr. Leon, and we'll take Mr. Miller. District 6.
An amazing question came from our first conversation around black male teachers and their importance, and I neglected to share just a very personal story and note. In teaching at E.L. Connolly, I was mentored by two amazing black educators, Mr. Mathis and Mr. Darville. Before I became Dr. Leon, they called me Dr. Leon. When I told you about finding my purpose, it was always something different. I thought I was headed to law school, but again, in working with those students and having that investment of those two men who guided me, who mentored me, absolutely changed my pathway. That seed that they planted is a seed that gets planted in Atlanta every day. And we deserve leadership who actually believes and lives into the words of Dr. Alonzo Krim, this community of believers. I know that you all are a community of believers because you're here, but what we need you to do is get out and spread the word over the next few weeks that you have something and someone to believe in. I'm running for District 6. I need your support. You can find our information at drleonforaps.com. Thank you for coming out, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all today.
Thank you, Dr. Leon. Mr. Miller?
I'm Tyrese Miller, and I want to just be clear on my vision for Atlanta Public Schools. I believe that youth jobs and internships should be offered year-round. The Year of the Youth program should not be something that's just for the summer. We give too many corporations tax cuts in the city of Atlanta for us not to have the resources. I believe that MARTA should be free for parents and students, understanding that the gap that we have economically in our district, that we need additional support to get us to and from things, especially revolving around schools. I believe that we need to protect our teachers, giving them properties to live with livable wages and livable opportunities in the city of Atlanta. And I believe that we need to really target early literacy, providing families with books at early ages to support our students. I've worked for Councilman Lewis' office with students every day in our district. I've been an intern for Atlanta Board of Education my senior year of high school and shot an equity documentary, which is the reason we have an equity task force now. So I hope I can earn your vote and your support on this campaign journey. Like Roy said, we are the youngest people in this race, and we're fighting because we have the most experience for the newest time. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates for District 6. And we'll have Sanjay. Oh, you already, I'm sorry. So we'll conclude with Dr. Owens and Tony Mitchell. I know Sanjay gave yours, but we'll have you give the last one if needed. Go ahead.
Everyone, I'm Dr. Stephen Owens, and I'm just thinking about the things that I need to grow in right now. I speak too fast at the lectern. I run a little hot. I didn't raise a lot of money. I stopped when I raised the amount that I thought was enough because it felt profane. If you have the money to give to a campaign, give it to your school, give it to your church, give it to the needs on the west side of Atlanta. Don't give it to me. I will be fine. I don't know a lot of powerful people, so I try to make up for it by knocking on every single door I can. 5,053 doors at this point. I'm not going to win probably any popularity contest. I'm only good at one thing in this world, and that is making sure that schools do right by those who are historically marginalized, and I will fight every day in this position or not to make that a reality.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. Mr. Mitchell?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Mitchell, and I'm running for your APS Board seat in District 2. I think our education system is under attack, and I think there's a lot of work that we need to do to fix it. I think students only rise as high as the communities that lift them. So we have to be able to invest into our communities. You know, when we talk about literacy rates, across APS, we've heard those numbers over and over again, around 30%. But when you start to drill down in districts like the West Side, those numbers drop down tremendously. About 18% of kids are reading on grade level. How do we bridge those gaps for those students? How do we create community partnerships to where community feels a level of investment into what our kids need from a resource perspective? How do we bring in Black churches? How do we bring in community-based organizations? How do we bring in those people to lift the tide for our students? So again, my name is Tony Mitchell. I'm here to run for your APS Board seat in District 2, and I hope to have your vote come November.
Thank you. And last, Sanjay?
I get a second closing statement, so that's good. Hey, just thank everyone again. And, I just want to make it very clear again, I am an APS dad. I have a kid in school. That is a lot of motivation for me to want our schools to be better for every kid in our city. And that's what I'm running for. I know we have an issue with our budget. I would like to fix that. I would like to take that money and move it to where it's needed for outcomes, exceptional needs, and all the issues we talked about. We can't get there and overcome those obstacles unless we find the money and the resources, and we cannot continue to throw more money at this problem. $1.85 billion is a lot of money, right? And I don't think we should be doing more. I want to focus on our accountability, our transparency, and community engagement. That's a big one for me. I really, really want to be that strong representative that shows up for District 4 and helps us bridge this gap between District 4, North Atlanta, South Atlanta, our parents, APS, our board members. We are all one big community that belong to the city of Atlanta. We need to work together, we need to partner, and we need to make our schools better, and we can do it if we all come together. That's what I plan to bring to the table. So thank you very much, everybody.
Amen. Well, give it up for the candidates. Thank y'all for staying. We have some choices to make. Early voting is when? October 14th, and election day is when? Amen. So y'all all gonna vote? I want to say thank you to Bill Crane for being here so much. Larry, thank you so much for being here, for being excellent moderators. Thank you to the Ali Center. Mr. Ali, thank you for the crew. Candidates, thank you. Team, Cameron Smith, our board, Naranjana Sivaji, thank y'all for this evening. Feel free, there's a table back there with candidate literature, so if someone says something that you love, grab the literature. They have more than one opportunity to donate, knock doors over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to be out there knocking doors. You want to knock doors with me? Come knock doors with me. But that's our event tonight. Thank y'all so much for joining.